Hello.
I'm from Vancouver.
Vancouver.
Yes.
Wow. You're still in yesterday then?
I'm not sure.
No, it's late for you, yeah?
It's 12:30 in the morning.
It's 12:30 in the morning. So you are today. Yes, very
Yes.
much so. I always get confused with these huge time differences.
I know.
Okay. And Sharon, hello.
Hi, how are you? And I can see Farah has joined as well. Hi, Farah.
Hi, Farah.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Logging in from India. Hi, Martin.
Good day.
Hi, Jen.
So I'm keen to get going on time. So there may be a couple of people that will join us shortly. And if they do, we will accommodate that as they arrive. However, as we have an hour together, I want to maximise our time and make sure we can get the most out of it. While we're waiting for everyone to join, I just want you to have a little think about for you as you join this mentoring program, what sort of comes up as a challenge for you, and perhaps pop it in the chat box. Now, I'm making an assumption that everyone's used Zoom before. If you haven't, can you put your hand up? Has everyone used? So you'll see down the bottom, you've got your chat box down the bottom. You've got your mute button you can turn off. You've got your video that you can turn off. And also when you go to the participants list, there's also a hands up if you need the hands up at all. So a challenge. Thank you, Jan. So something that you like meaningful for your colleagues, yep. Okay, and what I'll do is that we'll check in again during our time, and then I'll check in again at the end to make sure we've covered off on your challenges. And if we haven't had an opportunity to, I'll make sure that we do make time for it at some time. For those of you that I haven't met, so there's a couple on the line that I haven't met before, I'm on the global board with fellow board member Rosanna, and Rosanna is the rep for Canada, and I'm the Oceania rep, and I'm really excited to be the program manager for the IAF Global Mentorship Program. Now, I just want to check in with you because my screen has just done a bit of a technology whoopsie on me, and I've lost all of you. So can you see my screen? I just need someone to give me a verbal. You can see my PowerPoint?
I can see you.
Thank you.
Not the PowerPoint.
You can't?
No, I see the video.
No, I can see you, Sharon, but not the PowerPoint.
All right, cool. Excellent. I've worked out the problem, so just bear with me for 1 minute and I'll fix that. Okay, now I don't have any technical support with me, so if I do happen to miss anything in the chat box, and because we're a small group, I'm going to rely on you to interject at any time if I miss anything, and so we can work together as a team. I want to use the breakout rooms a couple of times today as well as a group. The other thing that I'll just ask you to do as well when we are all in a group, if you can hear anyone making background noise, just to check if your mute button is on so that we're not distracting each other as we go through the PowerPoint today. The other thing I'd like you to add to the challenge before we get going is I'm keen to know what you would like for today have to have been of value. What would you like to walk away from the webinar having discussed? So if there's something extra to the challenge that you've presented, can you just pop that in the chat box as well, and I'll make sure that we can check off on that. It's gone very quiet now because everyone's obviously muted. And also we did a very quick round of introductions, but I might just get everyone just to, in a moment, turn off their mute and just share their name again and where they are in the world. So I'll start with Farah.
Hi, everyone. I am in south of India in a city called Bangalore. I'm really happy to be on this call and meet many of you. I do have a confession. I am going to have to get off the call in half an hour. So and the next call is at 5 a.m. so tomorrow morning. So I thought I'll try and get the most from it and then get the recording. So just want to set that up.
Thank you, Farah. Thanks for letting me know.
Thanks.
Penny.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name's Penny Walker. I'm calling in from London in the UK. We've got a sunny day here, a bit chilly, but it seems like a good place to be at the moment. Sorry, was there anything else you wanted to know?
No, that is wonderful.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you, Penny. And welcome, Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl Smale. I'm in New Zealand. It's 7:30 at night here, and we've just gone back to standard time, so it's dark.
Thanks, Cheryl. And Sharon, fellow Sharon.
Hi, I'm Sharon Lee from mainland China, and I'm currently on a short trip in Sydney. And it's also getting dark outside because it's just 5:30 or 5:40 p.m. here. Nice to meet you, everyone.
Thank you, Sharon. Martin. Are you on mute, Martin?
Oh, I'm sorry. Hello, everyone. Martin Gilbraith from London in the UK, where it's sunny in my part of London, and it's 8:30 in the morning.
Excellent. I'm glad. And I know London, as soon as there's sunshine, everyone's out and about, aren't they? London, they're very keen to be in the parks.
We're not sunbathing yet. It's 8:30 and it's still pretty chilly, but we'll see.
Thanks, Martin. Rosanna.
Am I on mute? No, I'm not. Rosanna von Saken from Vancouver, Canada. Is 12:38 a.m. I am looking forward to learning more about the program and how this all works.
Thanks, Rosanna. And Jan.
Good day, this is Jan Vassen from the Netherlands. It's 9:30, also chilly and sunny. I'm halfway between my office and a client in the Utrecht Central Station, where I've rented a small space to do this Zoom session.
Thank you. And did I miss anyone?
That's me, Yati.
Oh, hi, Yati. Apologies.
From India, Mumbai. Is pretty warm, hot, almost hot out here. Midday, afternoon 1:30. Well, yes, I'm all excited to know about the program.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And welcome to everyone. So with the program today, a lot of some of the logistics are already in the handbook. So I don't want to actually repeat anything that's in the handbook. I'm hoping that I can value add with some other things today. And then if there are some logistical questions, which I sense from the questions around how the program works, that we do get to cover them off during the session. So what I was looking at covering is really to start with what is mentoring, because we all wear so many hats. So I'm keen to know from your perspective, what are some of the behaviours, the strengths, the skills that we use that separate a mentoring hat compared to some of the other hats that we wear? A very quick program overview and looking at the roles and responsibilities that we have as a mentor. Then some guidelines that sit around that, and I want to look at how understanding learning styles could support us, and also what are some of the mentoring skills that underpin us as we work with our mentees, and also what some of the potential challenges could be that we face. So that's what we have as our agenda. So I'm going to start by breaking you into two groups, and in one group I want you to have a little, and this is only just for a couple of minutes, so very 3 or 4 minute quick conversation. So I'm going to get half of you to think about what are the attributes of a facilitator and a consultant, and the second group will look at what are the attributes of a mentor and a counsellor. So just give me a minute while I allocate you into breakout rooms. So I'm just going to give you 3 or 4 minutes. So I'll send you a little actually, I'll tell you who will be in each room so you know which one you have. Oops. Okay. So I'll have Farah, Jan, Martin and Rosanna in one room. So you'll be looking at what the attributes of facilitator and consultant are. And in the second room, we'll have Penny, Sharon, Cheryl and Yatin looking at what the attributes are of a mentor and counsellor. So this is a very quick conversation, just 3 or 4 minutes and we'll come back. So I'll open the rooms and I'll see you in 3 or 4 minutes.
Cool. Thanks.
Back again?
Well, didn't we do great? A-team.
Yay.
We were the best.
Well done. It was meant to be succinct, so so apologies if it was too succinct for some of you. So I'm hoping that there might be someone that might be happy from Breakout Room 1 to share what they came up with for facilitator and consultant.
I saw you taking notes, Rosanna.
You caught me. Yes. So we said that both consultant and facilitators need to be aware of process and know about process, and they need to be able to ask good questions. On the consultant side, generally clients are looking for subject matter expertise. They're looking for recommendations. They need to be able to answer some of the questions, maybe delivering particular services or products. They are more content and outcome driven, whereas a facilitator is more neutral and they are focused on process.
Thank you, Rosanna. And the really interesting thing for us as facilitators is that many people are also owner-operators that are wearing consultant hats. So there's this tension, isn't there, that sits between being a consultant and a facilitator, because a consultant, we're being paid for answers, and facilitators are about creating a framework for people to come up with their own answers. Yeah, absolutely.
The one thing I forgot to mention that Jan had a good one, and that is a facilitator need to be aware not to become a consultant, whereas a consultant can be a facilitative consultant. Yeah,
wise words. Thank you. Excellent. And Breakout Room 2, is there someone that'd be happy to share what they came up with for counsellor and mentor?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm the appointed rapporteur for Breakout Group 2, and we found some common attributes between a mentor and a counsellor, that they need to be a good listener, and they need to do that in order to understand the real issues, not just necessarily the presenting issues. And the differences between them, we thought that a counsellor, we weren't quite sure about that term, so we agreed that we were interpreting it as being like a therapist. So they would be taking a more of a neutral kind of listening and reflecting role. We talked a little bit more about the mentor role as potentially taking a coaching style, but adding in their own advice and experience. So there's a kind of a content role, which perhaps the counsellor wouldn't have.
Yeah. And also the other thing, because thank you just highlighting that you're doing it from a therapy perspective, because when I think about a counsellor, the other thing that comes to mind for me is it's often healing something from the past. So it's about recovery. And when you think about mentoring, consulting and facilitation, it's often about the future. And so it's a focus about discovering where people are going to. And although we may honour and refer to the past, it's about where people are moving to rather than healing where they've come from. And I know that that's a generalisation, won't be the case in all situations that we're put in, but I suppose I'm taking that as a generalisation. So it's important that, as a mentor, you're a mentor to facilitators. So you're bringing a bit of that framework where you're going to have a framework that you're working with. From the consultant perspective, they're going to be expecting you to bring expertise and experience. And also, from that counsellor hat, the bit that you bring with you from there is around empathy, compassion, and understanding that we are the sum of all parts of our experiences that we've had in the world. So from a mentor perspective, I just want to highlight that sometimes mentees think that mentors should be a consultant and that you are there to give information. And I would challenge them on that, because as a mentor, you're there to challenge them for them to seek their own answers, and you can value add to that with your storytelling and your experience. So it's a bit of a shift, because if the mentee was coming to you for the answers, then it would be a lot easier for them to pay you as a consultant. So I look forward to you challenging your mentees. And, I often think about mentoring, it's around looking at where they want to go to, the pause button, so where are they now? And sometimes we have to actually rewind to go back to where people have come from before they can move forward as well. So in the top right-hand thing, I've just got my little graphic there around, yay, we finally get it and we have takeoff. So from an IAF perspective, we do not have a definition of what mentoring is. So I've pulled a few out, and I know that Cheryl, who's on, would be familiar with the first definition, which is from the Fortin Group. And the Fortin Group is a global coaching and mentoring organisation. And the bottom one is from David Clutterbuck, which many of you may also have heard of, who's done a lot of work in the mentoring space. So I'll just give you a minute to quickly read that, and keen to see what stands out for people as they read those 4 different definitions. Okay, and because we're a small group, I'm happy for you to share verbally.
What strikes me is that they all seem to agree, I think, that mentoring is as much or more about relationship than it is about knowledge or information.
Great observation. Anyone else notice what stands out for them?
What stands out for me is in the number 3rd bullet, where it says it's a supporting learning relationship. It seems to focus on the learning process where knowledge, experience, and wisdom are exchanged.
And it's a really interesting shift, isn't it? Because when we think about what hats we're wearing and the difference between consultant and mentor, it's around the mentee learning rather than the giving of information. Yeah, so it's an interesting twist, isn't it, on the mindset that we take to our relationships.
Yep.
Anything else that stands out? Yep.
Stands out for me is in bullet point 2, intentional agenda. And I was wondering, especially with one of my candidate mentees, who owns that agenda? Is it exclusively the mentee that sets that agenda? And what role do you have as a mentor? Obviously, you can challenge that agenda, but can you give it a twist?
Yeah. What do others think?
I see Cheryl here, the mentee owning that agenda. However, if there's some dissonance with the agenda and the conversation, then I would see the mentor would have a role in challenging that.
I could see that there could rightfully be a process of negotiation in the contracting stage where you might say, okay, so that's your agenda. Well, I'm not particularly interested in helping you with that, but I'd be interested in helping you with this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I guess ultimately, if there's too much distance or the potential mentor doesn't feel able, either for reasons of preference or knowledge and experience, to help with a particular aspect, then maybe it's not right for those 2 people to be in the mentoring relationship.
Does the IAF claim some ownership of that agenda? Let me throw an example on the table.
Well, not from
The conversation is very early. I've just had 2 or 3 email exchanges with one of my candidate mentees. This is a person who might be looking at help with business development. So develop a business as a facilitator. Now, I'm not sure whether that's in line with IAF values about the mentoring program. Would that be something that I would support?
That is a really good question now, because when we were looking at setting up the mentoring program, lots of questions came up about what would people like to be mentored on, and one of them was business. So from our perspective, we see the relationship is confidential, and what you contract between the 2 of you to work on is up to the 2 of you. The only thing I would put on that, and I think back to Martin and Penny's point, if there is too much distance distance between what you bring to the relationship and what the mentee is wanting from the relationship, it's a great time to discuss that at the contracting phase. The other thing that would be really good to raise at the contracting phase is, are they looking to then go on and perhaps do their CPF? Or later this year, we'll be launching our endorsed product as well. And with the endorsement, mentoring is going to be part of being endorsed as a facilitator, and therefore that may restrict what the mentee would work on, because it's looking at the competencies and the ethics of the IAF. So the contracting stage is really important to be quite clear around what the mentee would like out of the relationship. However, we're quite open to whatever works for the mentee. As long as you've had the conversation around professionally, are they looking at doing the CPF, or potentially when the new endorsed product comes out, would be looking at that?
For my information, where does endorsed sit on the scale of certified? Is it a grade above or below certified?
It is below, so it's not a certification. It is purely acknowledging that a facilitator has begun their learning journey and have started that learning journey by understanding and incorporating ethics and values into their practice.
Thanks. Clear.
I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about parameters and boundaries of this mentor-mentee relationship in terms of content, because I can imagine the scope of what topic or expectations can blow up really easily.
Yeah, and it's a bit like a dance, Rosanna, because often what you start with is not what you finish with. So part of the role as a mentor is flexing to those needs as well. As I said, I can't see why we would put boundaries. I think the boundaries are around what you are prepared to work in, and if they go outside your boundaries of what you're happy to work in, then that's a time to call it. So either you could call that in several ways by speaking to the office, so to Muji or to myself, or you might recontract and say, look, we feel that we're going down a pathway that's not of use, and to reset your contract. But generally, Rosanna, if you're comfortable with the topic, I'd go with it, because you're meeting the mentee's needs, and you'll know if it's not right.
I'd suggest that if any of us or our mentees are concerned about the relationship, one point of reference could be IAF's values and ethics statement, because we are all bound by that, and that's parameters for all of us as members. Even though it's not designed for the mentoring process, it might be relevant and helpful.
Absolutely. It's a good point, Martin, because that actually is raised in the handbook as well. Yep. That's highlighted in there.
Mentioned the handbook a couple of times, and
yeah, I was about to say
a lot of us don't know what this is, so could we have it, please?
Oh, you don't have the handbook?
No.
No, we don't have it.
Well, that makes life a bit difficult if you don't have it, doesn't it? So let me just write a little note here.
Didn't even know it existed.
I think some of us were wondering if we were missing something.
Well, now we know you are. All right. It's not a huge...
It's exactly the kind of thing I thought I might be missing, although I hadn't named it.
That's okay. I'll ask Muji nicely if he can make sure he gets it out to all of you. And it's not an extensive handbook, but it does just give a few basic things in there. So apologies, I just made an assumption that had been sent out with the information to you. And I know Rosanna and I had a quick chat, because part of this is like riding a bike, so it's going to be a bit clunky as we get things going smoothly. So thank you for everyone that's been giving me feedback, or Muji feedback, so that we can continue to grow to ensure we can meet everyone's needs.
Sharon, on the handbook, can I ask, will the mentees also have that? Or should they have that?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
All the mentors and mentees will have exactly the same handbook.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. You are welcome. And apologies, that was a terrible assumption, wasn't it? We know what assuming does.
Are there other documentation that we should have?
The contract, so you've got the contractor, the contracting, a copy of that. The other thing that I haven't provided to anyone or to Managing Matters, I also have a prep form that you're more than welcome. I can send you a template for that for you to use. So when each time you meet, it just says, you know, did you do what you committed to? If you didn't, what got in the way? You know, what are you proud of, and what would you like to focus on, just to get them in the right mindset before you meet. So I'm more than, if you'd like that, I can send that out to you as well.
That would be great.
Yes,
no
please.
worries. All right, I'll make sure that I add that. I'll send that to Moochie so I can send that out as well. Make a little note. Okay, so very quickly continuing on from the conversation of the overview and knowing that you do not have the handbook, I wanted to highlight that this really is a formal mentorship program, and the really I think powerful thing about formal versus informal is that the relationship is declared. You know exactly what you're going to be working on. You have a start and a finish time, and you can measure your success. So I encourage you to have a conversation with your mentees around how are you going to evaluate that your relationship has been, and I don't mind what word you use, but it's around how are you going to evaluate your success, because it's different to everybody. The matching process, one of the things that was really important to us, that the mentees had the opportunity to choose their own mentor, so they had ownership right from the start, and there's been some teething problems around that, so apologies for those that sort of got mentee emails out of the blue. We'll make sure that we fix that next time so it's a lot smoother. And when it wraps up in 6 months' time, the formal part of this relationship is completed. However, if you feel that you'd like to continue to work with your mentee, it's totally outside IAF, and you're more than welcome to do so if that's what you'd like to do. So, you know, from a formal expectation, it's 6 months, and then what you do post the 6 months with your mentee is totally up to you.
Sharon, from the perspective of the global program, will there be a number of discrete 6-month tranches of this program, or will it be a rolling program with mentors and mentees joining and leaving all the time?
No, we'll keep them in 6-month blocks, so that because that would be too hard for the mentors if you've got people coming in and selecting. So we're doing 6-month blocks. So it'll be two programs a year, and also for those that are looking, once the Endorse program is up and running, it'll give a nice block that can value add mentees into that program if that's the way that they're choosing to go. Okay. So, and you know, we'll evaluate that too, Martin. If we see that we need to change that, we will. However, that's our intent. There'll be 2 lots.
So this is
12-month
April,
cycle.
May, June, July, August, September. This is an April to September program,
yes.
is it?
Yes,
right.
Yes, yep.
And Sharon, I just see that there's questions related to number of mentees and will there be enough mentors for mentees? And I'm mindful that I've already said no to a mentee just because with my workload at the moment I can only cope with one. So I'm interested in that as well. Yeah.
So thank you, and please, because like I say, because I haven't got anyone checking chat box, I'm hoping that you guys can do that for me and just highlight. So thank you for that, Cheryl. The maximum, from a program perspective, maximum mentees that we recommend is 3. We have some mentors that do have, I think we've got a couple that have 3 mentees. We also have mentors that do not have mentees. So we do have current capacity to take on a handful of more mentees if we needed to.
What are the numbers overall? Can you tell us how many mentees and mentors in total, roughly?
Roughly, I think there's 50 odd. I'd have to double check, but I think there's about 50 mentors.
Oh, great.
And nearly 40 mentees.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about the formality? Yeah, so we have to declare our relationship, we have to set up a contract and write in the contract what we want to work on and how we measure success. What about the privacy of that data in terms of the development? Is there a formal position on that?
Yes, there is. From the contract that you sign at the start, the contract goes to IAF, which will be held there, and that will be held as confidential information. I would suggest that you meet, there's two parts to it. So there's contractual mentor-mentee, where you're filling out a standard form that will go to the office. I would suggest that you have a more in-depth form or contract that you do between the two of you that is confidential. Because I think one of these, for this program to work well, it's really, really important that the mentee knows that whatever they're working on with the conversations that they have are confidential or will not be shared.
Is there a formal evaluation at the end or a reporting at the end that also goes to the office?
Yes, there will be an evaluation. It'll be very general though. There won't be any content, unless someone's happy to share that.
Yeah. And none of this will go to an assessor for a future CPF of the
No,
mentee? Right.
no. Okay. And also there are not any assessors. That's something we've had to be mindful of, that assessors it would be quite difficult to be an assessor and a mentor because you're potentially creating conflict of interest. Yep.
Of course.
So does that mean that none of the mentors are CPF assessors?
To my knowledge, they're not. No.
Okay.
So we're mindful of that from the start.
Good, yeah. That's reassuring, because one of my mentees, one of the things that we're potentially going to be working on is their CPF application. So it feels like that's fine because I'm not an assessor. It'll be more like a peer giving kind of feedback. Of course, I need to manage their expectations that because I'm not an assessor, I might be giving bad advice. But I have been through the process myself, so hopefully I won't. But
that raises an interesting question for me, Sharon. I've been asked more than once in the past to support people one way or another in preparing for CPF, and I've spoken to Lindsay and others about doing that, and their rather forthright and very clear advice is don't. My understanding is the CPF program advises very strongly that candidates should not be supported in preparing their application because it can cause more problems than it can than help. So is that something you've discussed in designing the program? Because I imagine lots of mentees would want that help.
I agree, Martin. I would suspect that there'd be a lot of people that will be looking at being mentored to achieve their CPF. And my understanding is that the reason that they are mindful around that is, what about if you work with a mentee, they go for their CPF and they don't get it, is one. And also they say that going through the CPF process, all parts of it is part of the learning. So if they are mentored through it, then they're missing out on some of the learning that comes with going through the credential being,
And what I remember particularly being told is that every CPF journey is unique to them and their circumstances, and so nobody else's experience or anticipation of what they might come across is reliable. Is a reliable prediction of what this particular candidate will come across. So you don't want to set them up to expect something that they may not apply to them. It occurs to me that some specific guidance from the CPF program to the mentoring program would be really helpful, actually, because I imagine just about every one of us is going to be asked that in some way or another.
Absolutely.
Sorry, in China, I guess.
Thank you, Sharon. And sorry, Penny.
I would find that very helpful, because I can definitely see ways in which I could support somebody through that process, which would enhance their learning and not reduce it. I mean, I find it that there seem to be quite a lot of assumptions in there about how somebody is going to provide support to somebody else who's going through the process. You know, as a coach, I find it sort of impossible to believe that my interventions could reduce somebody's learning. So as someone whose instinct would be to say, yes, I can definitely help you with this, if that's not what the program wants me to say, I need to really see that, because I'm going to need some help sticking to that, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Penny, because I actually, as Martin was talking, I was writing a note to exactly do that, to get some formal guidelines around their expectation of mentors that are asked to support people for their CPF candidacy.
I always tell people to stop concentrating on your CPF and start concentrating on being a good facilitator. And when you can honestly say you're a good facilitator, then you can be a CPF.
Thank you, Mark, and welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think
what an entrance, Mark. Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, you know, I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Related to Mark's comment, hi Mark, it's Cheryl here. The CPF is very much around demonstrating the IAF facilitation competencies, and certainly in terms of supporting someone who's got aspirations to go for their CPF. You can't go very wrong in the meantime, and in the absence of guidelines, with really helping them understand the competencies and understanding how they demonstrate it, understanding the values and the ethics and how they demonstrate them.
Yeah, which is a shift of mindset, isn't it, Cheryl, where you're focusing. Yeah.
One thing I want to make mention, though, is that I agree with everything I've heard so far. I think consistency is important, because what we don't want is to have some mentee says, well, I was mentored by so-and-so and they gave me advice on preparing for CPF, and I was mentored by so-and-so and they didn't give me advice. So I think as mentors, we need to be consistent in our response, whatever that could be.
Yeah, thank you, Rosanna. So I'll make sure I'll get something in writing that will give everyone clear guidelines around what that looks like. Mm-hmm. Excellent. I'm mindful we've only got about 15 minutes left. Time is whizzing by. I think these conversations are really important. So thank you, and I've let the energy of the group take where we have gone. So I'm hoping everyone's okay with that. Okay, so I think that we have probably touched on what the expectations of the program are from our perspective, and I want you to think about, from a contracting perspective, also when you're having your conversations with your mentee, what are your expectations of the program, so that you've been quite clear and transparent right from the start with your mentee. And also, I just want to touch base before we went any further. Is there any, because I can't see the chat box on my screen, is there any of the challenges that have popped up that you'd like to have addressed now? I'll just check in with the group. And I take silence as a no. I'll just let you know. Okay.
So, Sharon, I'd ask, if I may, I haven't seen the handbook, but I've seen the contract, and it says we're expected a minimum of 2 hours per month contact time. Is that a deal breaker for IAF, or is that up to, what happens between the mentor and the mentee?
That is not a deal breaker from an IAF perspective. It's a recommendation. So you might look at that as 1 hour per fortnight. You might look at it as 1 hour per month. You might look at it as, it doesn't matter. It's what works for the two of you. It's a guideline because everyone's looking for guidelines. So we put that out there for discussion.
Thank you.
You are welcome. The other part I've put down there is that what is the difference between transactional and transformational? And we think about it from our facilitator's hat, you know, when we're going in and working with a group, what hat are we wearing? Is it transactional? Is it transformational? What is different for us to then look at, are we being transactional or transformational with our mentors? And I thought I might just break us in, and I'm guessing that Farah has left our group as well, and we've had Mark join us in the meantime. I want to just quickly break you into two groups to have a quick discussion around, for you with your mentor hat, what is the difference between being transactional as a mentor and being transformational as a mentor? So I'm just going to, just very quickly, it'll just be 2 or 3 minutes like I did last time. So bear with me while I deal with technology. And I'll just give you a couple minutes to chat in your small groups. I'm opening the rooms up, and I'll see you in about 3 or 4 minutes. Mark, so I joined you to breakout room 1. Welcome back, everybody.
We're back.
Excellent. Now, I'm hoping I have a lovely volunteer, because I have such an awesome group of my 8 mentors. There's a volunteer from breakout room 1 and breakout room 2 that are happy to share for them. What will be the shift in you as to be a transformational mentor?
Well, we took the
what might the
precaution of
differences
assigning
be?
an official rapporteur this time, having been beaten on that last time. So that falls to me. And
Thank you, Matt.
I think there were 3 points at least that I remember. One is Rosanna talked about transactional being you give me this, I'll give you that, whereas transformational is more about growth and learning. We agreed it's not so much about long-term or short-term in terms of how long the change takes, but how long-lasting the change is. And I offered the metaphor of whether you're a caterpillar turning into a butterfly or a caterpillar turning into a slightly bigger or better caterpillar, or whether you take 2 or 3 steps down the same road or whether you switch to an entirely different road altogether.
Excellent. Thank you, Martin. And breakout room 2?
Okay, so that's me again. So transactional, we had words like following the rules, sharing tools and concepts and models, and it being perhaps a shorter term focus or timescale, and transformational being about a shift on a journey, a more holistic approach to the developing the whole person, and the understanding that there might be some kind of paradigm shift within that person's assumptions or insights, rather than simply acquiring new knowledge or skills.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everyone. And I know that another expression that people have shared with me is when you think about transactional, you're in the room, and when you think of transformational, you're on the balcony, which I think is a really lovely way of looking at it as well.
Well, I don't know. I'm someone who suffers quite a lot from fear of falling, so I'm taking the room. Thank you very much.
I'm not quite sure what that imagery is about.
Well, apologies if I've challenged anyone with that imagery. And the other thing too that probably stands, I'm challenging my mentors is a good start, isn't it? And I think, a lot of what I think stands out for me is when you think about all those different interpretations between transactional and transformational, that often the transactional is relating to the what is being done. And to Penny's point, that when you're looking at transformational, it's also about the who. So who are they becoming as facilitators is really important shift to be transformational as a mentor. By thinking about some of the roles and responsibilities of mentors, I've put the first one up there about preparing for mentoring sessions with a question mark. Personally, I'm a great advocate for making the mentees do all the work, and so I would expect them to do preparation for their sessions rather than the mentor be doing that. So ensure that you have that conversation during the contract phase. The other thing I wanted to point out again is going back to what Jan talked about, confidentiality. It's really important we have that discussion up front about confidentiality, so the mentees feels free to talk about whatever might be of priority for them at that time. And also have a conversation around what might be a conflict of interest. And we already had one today about the potential, what about if an assessor was a mentor, for example, and there might be other ones that might pop up from a work perspective. So just have a touch on a conversation between the two of you. What might be a conflict of interest that comes up for you? The last one I just want to point out with that list is about keeping notes for sessions. I'm also a great advocate for the mentee doing all the work, and it should be the mentee's responsibility to keep notes for the sessions, not the mentor. And I know that's different for everybody, and some people would like to keep notes. Personally, I leave that responsibility with the mentee, and then I use a prep form for them to then write up and frame back to me what they'd like to work on. So I don't have to keep a note, keep a note of that. But that is my personal way of approaching it, and it doesn't necessarily need to be yours. Yes, Sharon.
Yes, a quick question here regarding the second last point. Presenting research and thoughts in the mentoring session. What exactly are we talking about there?
So I would have a conversation, but I think perhaps if you might have a article that's been written, you might refer them to perhaps things that in IAF flip charts, or it could be all sorts of things that you have access to that may add value to a topic. So it's about being quite, it's about providing that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm mindful too, we're supposed to technically finish in 4 minutes, and thank you, Jan, that you are about to hop on a train. Any other questions before I move on to the next slide? The rest of...
Yes, I do have a... Sorry, did I interrupt someone? A lot of these things are being discussed in the contracting phase. Now, before this call, I thought of the contracting phase, that's something between the first and the second call with the mentee. But then I thought maybe it's good to take a bit longer in terms of the contracting phase. Is there any view on that? Have there any thoughts been aired on that you might want to share?
From my personal experience, and I look forward to others value adding to that, I actually do the contract in the first session. I expect my mentee to already have spent some time around what they'd like to work on. And so therefore that contracting phase is really around how we're going to work together, what's our rules of engagement, and then we may adjust that contract during our time working together, or we may revisit it and say, how are we tracking? Personally, I like to have that pretty much done and dusted the first time we catch up. Any other thoughts from other mentors?
So just very quickly on confidentiality, in the coaching professional body that I'm a part of, the coaching kind of template or the coaching code of ethics says confidentiality except where the coach thinks that the coachee might be a threat to themselves or other people, which I understand is quite a standard confidentiality thing in a lot of kind of listening, supportive relationships. I've never had cause to use it, but I just offer it there as something that is quite standard in other situations. There's a kind of caveat on the confidentiality.
Okay, thank you, Penny. I'll look into that because I haven't added that into mine, and I also am a coach as part of my work, so I will follow that up, Penny. Are you with ICF or another body?
No, AOEC. I don't know how international they are. They're certainly very active in the UK. I'm happy to send you a link to their code of ethics if you like.
That'd be great because I could perhaps do some wordsmithing to add that in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Penny. Anything else? Because I have a couple of minutes to quickly just go through the rest of what I had, and I'll just check. I can see another little chat's popped up. Okay. The other thing I want to touch on really is we've looked at the program, we've looked at what mindset we're having, so it's around that transformation of our mentees and also around some of the roles and responsibilities. The other thing I want to look at is some of the things that we can support our mentee learning a little bit more about who they are as they show up and the impact that might have on how they choose to facilitate. So there are things like many of you would have done personality typing. There's free ones that you can do online. Another one, which Cheryl would probably be familiar with because this is a New Zealand person who created Bark. You can go online and do an online test for mentees to understand their method of learning. And by learning that, then how are they drawing on all of those components of how people like to learn into their facilitation room. So there's other tools and things that you can use to work with your mentee for them to gain a greater understanding of how they show up in the world and the impact they have on their room as a facilitator. The other things that I was going to touch on, and I'll do very briefly, is looking at what skills do we specifically draw on as a mentor. And the 4 things that stood out for me is around building trust, our questioning skills, our listening skills, and also about how do we give feedback. Because, as a mentor, one of the great things that we can do is challenge our mentees and also to give them valuable feedback on information that they may share with us. So this is something that a colleague, a fellow coach and a colleague of hers developed around trust. And it's a very simple triangle that has 3 parts to it. So it's looking at the intention, the words, and the relationship. And it's to remind us as mentors when we're working with our mentees, what is it that's going to, checking in with ourselves to ensure that we are focusing on these 3 triangles to maximise our trust with our mentee. So when we think about the intention space, it's about ensuring that our focus is on moving the mentee forward, that we're supportive of their needs, their learning, their growth, and their concerns as a mentee. Because sometimes, we can see the potential in someone, and so we want to take them where we think they should go, and sometimes it can be challenging to let go of that and focus on where the mentee wants to go. The relationship is ensuring that we let go of our own biases, our own egos, and our own agendas, and that sort of builds on where sometimes we can see things within someone that we'd like to harness or to grow, and maybe the mentor's not ready to show up in that space. And the other one is around words, so ensuring that when we use our words that they're neutral, non-judgmental, and allowing for the mentee to authentically express themselves. The next was around questioning, and I was going to, I'll just give a really quick overview because we all use questioning skills as facilitators. And a great question skill is open, it's succinct, it's a question that is asked of others that we don't know the answer to, and also it's about what I would call double clicking. So it's asking questions until the mentee is quite sure that they understand things for themselves, and also ensures that we both have clarity around what the mentee is saying. And the power of silence, I love silence. Silence is a great tool because it usually means 2 things. Several things. It may be they're an introvert and they need time to process. It may mean that you've asked an awesome question and they need time to process, or one that you've asked a terrible question, but that if you even have asked a terrible question, the silence is they're going to come back to you and tell you that. So always use silence as a positive rather than that you may have done something wrong and then you need to fill that silence. So many of these things I think are fantastic as we mentor because we bring them from our facilitation practice. I love thinking about listening and also about the skills of listening as a musician. And the reason why I love what sits between the 2 of them is because to truly listen as a musician, we have to empty our heads. Because we think about what the barriers are to our listening, it's around our busy selves. It's about we might be relating to a story that they're telling. We might be having our unconscious bias, creating judgments. And so as a musician, they can listen far more skillfully than the majority of us. I think they can listen, I can't remember how many times. It's a greater listening skills than what we have. Another statistic I heard, which was quite scary, is due to our listening skills, a lot due to our listening skills, that 9 out of 10 conversations we have actually miss the mark. So it's a bit scary to know 90% of the time that we're talking, it might not be hitting where we want it to. So it's a time to take a breath and appreciate and truly listen and be in the moment and be present. We haven't got time for it.
Times that we're talking, we haven't actually decided what we want out of talking.
I love that, Martin. That's so true. That's where we're going wrong. And particularly me as an extrovert, I've got to talk things out to get to the end. I'm mindful I am 5 minutes over. Is there anyone that has to rush off? Have we got 2 minutes to wrap up?
2 minutes is good.
Okay, I'm nearly there. The other one I want to touch on was feedback. So if we are going to take the time to give feedback, to be really mindful of the timing, the environment that we're in, and the language. And also going back to the contracting, is it's great to take the time to think about where is the mentee going to be at their best? Are they a morning person? Are they a night person? Are they in an office? If they are in an office, where can they go so they can be truly present as well? Because most of you as mentors are going to be mentoring in the virtual world. So ensuring you check in. And if we get the trust right, if we get the environment right, get the relationship right, we'll be releasing oxytocin, which is so powerful because then we're operating from our creative, our executive brain, from our frontal lobe rather than cortisol, because as soon as things aren't right for our mentee, they go into their primitive brain and it stops them being able to have that creative conversations. Challenges is, and I've got jigsaw puzzles pieces there, and the reason I've popped those there is because every time a mentee and a mentor comes together, it is like making a jigsaw, and we don't always know if it's going to work because of all the different parts or sums of who we are as we come together, and that's okay if it doesn't work as well, and knowing that you have the support if things aren't working, and to also have the conversation as part of the contract. What about if we get into our relationship and it's not working, what we're going to do? Because if you have that conversation up front, it's going to be a lot easier to have the courage to have the conversation if you need to. And that's it in a nutshell. So any questions or comments as we wrap up? I think what I would like you all to share in wrap up, I'll give you a minute to think about it, is what's one tip for you to be a transformational mentor? So what are you going to leave with the group? What's your one tip? And also, as we've gone over time, I would go back to the chat box, and if I haven't covered off on anything, I'll reach out to you individually.
I have one quick question. Is there a deadline for the mentees to enroll for this program?
It was beginning of this week, yes. But we did have a couple that came in last minute that we've accepted. So if you have someone in mind, let us know and we'll see if we can fit them in. But it was last week.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Monday. All right. I am going to go round and I look forward to hearing everyone's one tip that they'd like to leave with the group. So my mouse is not working. Who'd like to start? I'm going to let you self-organise.
I'll start since I typed in the chat.
Oh, thank you, Rosanna.
I said transparency.
Thank you.
And I just typed the humble inquiry.
Thank you, Sharon.
I would go, this is Yatin. I would go and say it's about empathic listening to what mentees' needs are.
Yeah. Thank you.
I wrote in operate from where they are at. So it's not from where you are at or what you expect from them, it's but from where they're at that point.
Yeah, thank you, Mark.
Cheryl here. I with it being a experienced group of people, focus on trust your instincts. If you're authentically listening, then trust your instincts about where to take it.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Maybe I should go next.
Thanks, Penny.
This is particularly a message to myself, actually. Don't be afraid to ask dumb questions. I know mostly what people are talking about, but sometimes I just don't know what they're talking about, and I should not be afraid to say, oh, I'm not sure I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Pen. Yeah. Jan, is Jan still on?
Yes, I'm on the train now, so I reconnected. I missed the question, but I guess this is about takeouts.
Yes, or one thing that one tip to be transformational as a mentor.
All right. Have you got others on your list that gives me the chance to think about this for 1 minute?
Yes, Martin.
Well, I wrote mutuality, but I don't like that very much anymore, so I'm still thinking about it.
How about you're allowed to change your mind?
Yes. Very pertinent in the UK at the moment.
Yeah. So true.
You had to go there, Martin.
Where? We're talking about mentoring, right?
We are. So, if I'm right, I think I have Jan and Martin left with their thoughts, and I have I missed anyone else? No.
Okay.
I'll go back to Jan
now.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
So if this is about transformation and transactional, I think apparently there seems to be an overall goal to be transformational, but I actually would like to do both. I'm a strong believer in small steps and making the way to the bigger goal. So I want to achieve progression on the transactional, and then being able to zoom out and see what does this mean for the longer term, for the more profound change, for the more lasting change. And I'd like to be able to zoom out and zoom in during the whole trajectory.
Great, thank you. It's a really nice way of combining transactional and transformational. Thank you. And Martin, did you come up with something new?
I wrote, leave your mentee with their thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And thank you so much for staying on over time. And like I said, if I will go through and check if I've missed anything and reach out to each of you individually. I'll also be checking in with you personally during the 6 months. So I might even see if there's an interest or energy to perhaps meet 3 months in and have a mentor hookup, so that if there's any questions, concerns, what's working well, that you can share with each other would be fantastic. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your morning, your day, your night, and happy sleeping, Rosanna. It must be way past your bedtime.
Oh, way past. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations on this program.
So nice to meet everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Great to
Bye.
have a happening. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.